Good morning, LinkedIn friends, HubSpot Nation. Happy Monday, February 17th, 2025. We're here for another episode of Let's Build Profoundly, introducing our early Profoundly pros. We're here today with Sarah Lane-Hawn. How you doing, Sarah?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I am doing fabulous. Still gushing about some product updates I saw this morning, but we're not here to talk about HubSpot and all its glory and all the cool things it's doing. We're here to talk about you today and introduce you to the fine people of HubSpot land. So let's just dive in. Question number one: what is your HubSpot expertise and how did you get it?
Yeah, it's a weird question, I feel like, to answer about yourself, but I first approached HubSpot working for in-house at a company in marketing leadership, and they were struggling with a HubSpot Salesforce integration. And at the same time, they were going through a merger and linking multiple Salesforce instances. So there was just a lot of data movement happening. And I had had experience in Salesforce and marketing automation tool integration work and build. And so that's why they brought me in. Had never touched HubSpot though at that point. It's a very trial by fire, figuring it out. Luckily, HubSpot is very much, if you understand data architecture, you can do it, right? Like if you know the strategy, if you know how operations works, you can do it in HubSpot. So was able to really learn and establish myself there. My role there was marketing operations is what I grew into as the head of marketing ops. And that was really what launched everything for me being in HubSpot. And so tying myself kind of to that platform, the next few in-house roles I had were all HubSpot shops. And so continued to kind of stay within the marketing ops realm, but lean into some of the other areas. So I work really heavily in the actual workflows. Like that's probably one of the places that I live the most. And then all of the fun workarounds that you get to do to try to make things operationally happen. So weird list segmentation rules and things like that. And then started leaning into more of the RevOps role as well, because I would have wonderful sales partners, but there's no one kind of connecting the full go to market motion. So, as someone who's really passionate about following marketing leads all the way through their life cycle, I immediately kind of filled in that gap and started looking more at like pipeline projection and how do we understand the full life cycle of our contacts from our database, and how are we doing multi-touch attribution to tie true revenue back to our initiatives. And so within HubSpot, kind of still live in that marketing operations and business ops sections, and am less focused on the sales operations. If it's super granular, we have really complex contract negotiation tactics that we need to use 3 different platforms for, not your girl. But if we're trying to build an actual funnel to get inbound leads to be sales ready to convert down into revenue, that's the space that I play in the most.
Awesome. So many interesting things I want to dig into there. And I usually I don't promote things unless it's like just perfectly stated. And like what we're trying to do with Profoundly, like you just described it in that you basically talked about the gap, like quote to cash, right? Is something where that's like not first on the priority list. You're trying everything else. I love quote to cash land, right? And this whole point of like bringing all these pros together, HubSpot is such an expansive platform now. You, man, good luck finding that unicorn that can help you with every piece of the platform. So I'm so glad you highlighted that uh, because it relates to what I wanted to ask you. Like that first job, um, like as you were saying, like all of the things that were going on in this organization, my mind went immediately to you can't boil the ocean. HubSpot is extra. Let's just get it done. You don't need all the resource. Like how maybe take us back to like how you navigated that internally and also like where you are now in terms of helping companies understand like what HubSpot's actually doing for them.
Yeah. So, what was really interesting at that company was they had an amazing marketing team. And so they had already a huge number of inbound leads. That part of their system was phenomenal. But the way that it was being run operationally was very jerry-rigged, like, full duct tape. But because their actual tactics and the way in which they did marketing was so powerful, I was able to come in, actually clean up and make processes and make automation and make lead scoring and do all of the things that are needed to actually make it into a funnel. So it's not just here's all this huge quantity that
Here's a
marketing is
bunch of
delivering.
data.
Yeah, and make it actually sift through and be valuable. And so that was where the prioritization started in HubSpot. And I'm someone who this is just how my brain works, but I like to start at the top and work my way down. And I think you can find kind of the business priorities and figure out what is the order that we need to really build. Because to your point, there's a million things you could do in HubSpot, right? But where is it going to make revenue impact? Let's start there. And then we can get into the nuances of like, I can save a little bit of time. I can save a little bit of energy. I can keep the data a little bit cleaner, right? Like you can get into those granular things later. But for most companies, what I have seen is their marketing lead to sales qualified lead, there is just this gap. Like it's just this unknown, unstructured, we try. And that right there is a gold mine. So like for that company, the first one I used HubSpot on, they had, when I got there, a 72% sales acceptance rate for their leads from marketing, which is good. I mean, like you're funneling leads in, 72% of them are valid. Cool. When you've got a huge quantity, that's great. Through building intentional structure, doing lead scoring, doing qualification criteria, doing nurture tracks, we were actually able to get that up to a 99% sales acceptance rate
Wow.
just through marketing ops. Marketing wasn't having to do anything new. Sales wasn't having to do anything new. Operationally in HubSpot, we were able to increase that from 72 to 99% of sales acceptance. That right there let the sales team focus in on what was valuable. And we then saw an increase in the actual output of revenue on the other side, where marketing was generating up to 40% of all revenue for the company. So it's these things that we don't necessarily think of because no one owns it.
Yeah.
But if you hone in on those in between steps, that's where operations can come and make the key difference. And then that turns into the bottom.
Yeah. No, I love the way you're separating kind of marketing and operations in this scenario because like you said in your intro, like it's hard to have any kind of marketing label and then go talk to the sales team and suggest that you're in charge or can impact or influence like anything that they're doing unless somebody has donned you with that responsibility, and even then you still have the marketing label. So are you trying to get more leads? What are you trying to do like
I
here?
think it depends on how you approach it in my experience, though. Like everywhere I've worked, the sales team, especially the BDR team, those have been my BFFs. Like those are my buddies. And the reason being that I come at it from a service oriented leadership perspective, right? Like they'll learn very quickly that I know what I'm doing. And so there will be an element of respect that is earned. But when it's telling someone what they have to do, there's always going to be a little bit of resistance. When it's offering support and enablement, then it's received much different. And so most of the time when I walk into a company, I meet with the sales team to say, hey, what would you like to get? Like if you're getting inbound leads from marketing, what's the trash that you don't want to spend your time on? And what do you want to receive? And getting that from their perspective, even if the perspective's skewed and it's not necessarily fully factual to the data of what's being delivered, it helps you know what the perspective is. And if you can speak to that perspective, and like in that case, being able to say, like, hey, you're having to sift through all these leads, and a lot of them aren't even valid. Like they're not good leads. If I could limit that so that every single thing you receive from marketing is the right person at the right time, they're already engaged, they know about us as a company, like, what would that impact? And then they start getting excited because now every lead they're receiving from marketing is valid and is actually an opportunity. Well, now you want to work together because you're seeing the value in both parties, collaborating. But it takes coming at it from that service perspective and saying, like, where's your pain point in this process? How do I alleviate that? I might not be able to remove it, but how do I minimize it and make the operations work for you instead of it creating friction? And I use lead scoring a lot for that, like coming up with a lead scoring model with sales and marketing involved, not equivalent feedback or ownership, but involvement.
Yeah.
That has huge impact in getting people on the same page because they all feel like, okay, we know the expectation. We know what's going to be coming in. We know what portion we think is going to be iffy. We know, right? And like
Yeah.
having those expectations reset then goes a long way from the marketing always just sends junk and sales never follows up with leads narrative, getting rid of that and getting back into what is the complexity of lead nurture and routing.
Yeah. No, I love that. Like alignment at its finest. Just getting people in the same room to talk about stuff instead of just assuming that 72%, sales acceptance rate is good or as good as it will get. Because I'm sure that 27%, that gap that you covered, all those not sales accepted leads probably have an outsized impact as far as people having a tendency to pay attention to that stuff versus what's always working or what's already working. But let's take a step back and let the people know, who is Sarah outside of HubSpot?
I can go a lot of different directions there because as much as I've loved kind of diving into the HubSpot universe, especially this last year, I've really like connected with a lot of people in the HubSpot group. But outside of that, I never really did. I never really created alignment with a platform. I've always been pretty platform agnostic because I love automation, I love problem solving. And so whatever I was handed, right, I worked with and you make the best out of it. And so at my core, I'm a problem solver and I'm just endlessly curious about efficiency. Optimizing things and having efficiency are just somehow core values. And I don't know how that works as a human, but they are. And so that's me from a professional standpoint and how I've fallen in love with doing operations work. On a personal perspective, like I spend the majority of my time just cozy at home. I'm very much an introvert who just loves people. And so if I can spend most of my days in my house with my fireplace, with my novels, like that's a happy time. And then I want to be in my community and seeing my people in small groups and really pouring into what it means to like do life together and support each other. And I think we've had a lot of opportunity in the last year to do that. I think we're coming into a stage in America where that's going to be more and more important for us to come and do life together with our community. And so really grateful for what we've built here in Durham, North Carolina, and like who those people are for us. But yeah,
I
I mean,
love the
I'm
way you
I'm
put
an
that.
open book. So any other questions about who I am is here.
It's wherever you want to take it, but I can take it somewhere. What kind of novels are we usually reading?
It depends. So I love like fantasy fiction. I love historical fiction. I've gotten really into like witch themed books recently. So I've have quite a few of those. And I find like a lot of the stuff that I enjoy for easy reading are like young adult novels, just because they're typically so pure in the storytelling and the character development is so important, like who that person is and what they're working through and what they're figuring out about themselves and the world. Like it's usually a pretty big focus in young adult novels. And then the world building is just so much more fun. It's not stifled or having to fit a specific mold. And so those are kind of my escape. I love anything that kind of goes into the whimsical and the magical, and isn't so set in the here and now and tactical of what we can touch.
And I love that point of view. Do you ever find yourself like reading fiction and then finding ways to apply it to real world or non um, business perspectives?
I've never really thought about it in terms of impacting my business perspectives. I'm sure there's some subliminal stuff there, but I will say real world impact. I really love when I come across things that have uh, like homesteading skills just weaved in, especially if I'm looking at historical fiction, right? And they just randomly go into detail about how they did something. And it could be making soap, or it could be, it could be anything, or they could be talking about like going and sourcing natural ingredients, in the woods, and like those types of things will pique my interest and be like, ooh, I feel like I know enough like cursory that I could dive into that and like learn how to do a skill. And so those things sometimes will bleed into the real world and strike again that curiosity of what else is possible to do.
Yeah, never shut off the learning. Kind of back on, well, still on the topic of Sarah, maybe a little more HubSpot specific. How does one become HubSpot Admin of the Year?
Great question. I cannot speak to that with any real level of intentionality of how that occurred. The Sprocketeer, community is really great, and wonderful people who know tons of just the technical detail of HubSpot, which is a great group of people to know. And I'm, associated. I know people in the group, but I wouldn't say that I'm hugely involved. But yeah, when I saw the award, I was nominated by a wonderful old colleague of mine. And once those nominations hit, I started getting other people co-signing on it on LinkedIn, and surprisingly started seeing myself in the top two with Ellie. And so once that happened, she and I, who were both nominated by the same person, so we had commonality there. We both started actually advocating for ourselves, and so started talking to people we had worked with and seeing if we could get additional votes in that last day, which is a very fun competition with her. And she actually ended up being the person that broke the news to me that I had received the award because I didn't know. And so was extremely gracious and kind in doing that for me. But yeah, it was neat because it is a community based award. And I really loved, like, of all of the things that I could have accomplished last year, I think that was one of my favorites because the people who were co-signing was a combination of other HubSpot experts who have known me and have seen some of my work, and past clients who I've worked for, and then past colleagues from different in-house teams that I worked at, who a lot of which weren't even like within operations or marketing, but had seen the impact, from a distance into their different areas of the business. And so it was a really just edifying kind of voting process because it wasn't just based on one thing or off of a test or off of hitting specific, KPI accomplishments as an advisor. Like, it was a very human centric award. So yeah, very, very grateful to have received kind of that accommodation from people who know me.
Social proof at the highest level. I love it. I had a good conversation with Cameron about this on Friday. And I think the only thing that, like, I think the only instruction manual that you could give anybody on how to try and do this is just show up in the community and help people. Like, there's so many different ways to admin systems now and label people on what they do or don't do with HubSpot. But there is no, like, when you show up every day in the community and you're helping people and guiding and making yourself known that way, it has an impact. And it's good to see that you're recognized for that. We're going to try and do our best impression of that at Profoundly Kickoff with some Profoundly Star awards that George is going to be ending the event on March 6th. But before that, you are a part of a panel that's going to kind of kick off or happen right before we break out into sessions called What is an Admin? What is a HubSpot admin?
Yeah.
That's going to be a pretty lively conversation.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. Receiving that award and then being part of that panel, like I wouldn't typically describe myself as HubSpot admin. Like that wouldn't be the term I would use. But then I also have a client right now who keeps calling me their HubSpot integrator, which is also not a title that I would use. And so there's so many ways to refer to people that at this point in time, like I have no true association with the specific words. But I think what's important is, to your point, like showing up, being involved, articulating what are the business needs that HubSpot is then coming in to fulfill, and then being able to advise on the actual architecture and put things into place. But being a HubSpot admin could be so many different things and look different on so many different people. And so one of the things that I'm excited about with Profoundly is that we are all different. Like when you talk about pros, we didn't get here by all following the same manual. There was no manual to follow. Like it didn't exist. So the fact that we've gotten to this place of mutual respect, of being able to vet each other's skills, like that is what really kind of drove that community to get developed. And so it's great because I think there is this humility and understanding that like you don't have to know everything. You cannot know everything.
Can't.
Where are your skills and where do those help businesses? And then when other needs arise that are outside of that scope, where is your community to come alongside to either just advise you to then go solve the problem or to step in and directly help the HubSpot user to do that next step of the puzzle. And I think that's wonderful because in a lot of industries and spaces, to be an expert means you do have to know it all. And there can be no room for error, no room for not knowing, no room for being human. And I think there's still some of that within some larger agencies that they create that perception of perfection. And what I really love about most of the people that I've met within the Profoundly group is that that's just not the air. Like it's very, I'm human. I'll let you know when I know things. I'll let you know when I don't know things, but I will never stop working to figure out how to solve it with you. And I love that personal approach because I think that's what has resonated well with me with clients is just, I'm going to be honest and you're going to know exactly what we are 100% on and we can bake into your business plan and count on, and what we are testing. And we will just find out if it's good or not. So yeah, I do think that that's going to be a really valuable conversation on the 6th, talking about what it is to be an admin, both for other people who are servicing HubSpot, right? Maybe you're an internal marketing or sales user, or you're doing operations in the day-to-day, but also for companies who don't have an admin. Like there's a lot of companies who are using HubSpot and it just falls on marketing because marketing wanted it to do automated emails, or it falls on sales because sales wanted it to manage their deal pipeline because they didn't have a real CRM before, right? And in those scenarios, it's falling on someone's hands to manage it that is got a full-time job, and being an admin is a full-time job. And so being able to then help those companies recognize this is how much is involved and you can learn a ton of it and you could be self-managed in a ton of it. And here's where you're going to need to have external resources or bring somebody into the team full-time. So I think there's some good conversations, both like no matter where a company is, they can be useful.
No, for sure. I love helping people realize like the word admin is ambiguous in that phrase because the word HubSpot is ambiguous in that phrase. And it doesn't matter what the second word is if you have not defined what HubSpot is for your business. So looking forward to that discussion and so happy you're able to, participate and join us on the platform in general. It's been great to get to know you. over the past few months. And if anybody viewing or listening wants to become a Profoundly Pro like Sarah, head over to profound.ly and hit the Give HubSpot Help button right next to the Get HubSpot Help button to sign up to be a pro. And also on the homepage, you'll see how to easily sign up for the kickoff event that we're talking about coming up on March 6th. So we hope you all join us. And until next time, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to talk.
Indeed. And until tomorrow morning, have a great day, everybody.